This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 27th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. New and used car prices are finally hitting the pause button as more supply hits the market. But there are other reasons for the price drops too, and we'll tell you about them and how they could affect you. They're probably affecting you even if you don't know it. Hyundai has announced it is going to spend billions developing software-defined vehicles. How about that, Chris? Software-defined vehicles. We'll tell you what that means and how it could affect what you buy in the future. Because we have to figure out what it means, but we will by the time we talk about it. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury. So imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. We're a show that leads the league in hyphens, Chris. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. Bearded Chris Teague, looking very dapper. Chris lives at one end of the country. I live on the other. And each week we get together to talk about cars, the car industry, and how you can get the most out of your car dollar. Chris, I'm curious. We haven't talked for a week. You had a week off. How are things going in Maine? Are the trees changing color? Has it snowed? What's going on?
I'm going to take the camera and show you everything is bright orange outside right now. The leaves are beautiful. Has not snowed. We've had a couple of frosts, but today's actually pretty warm. Nice 65 degrees.
Ah, lovely, lovely. Well, we've had some rain here in Southern California, which, makes the papers here. I guess there aren't papers anymore. It's lead on the news. People are tweeting about it. What's your road test vehicle this week?
I drove the 2023 Acura Integra, Jack. Super exciting car, manual transmission. Can't wait to talk about it.
Wow, 2023 Acura Integra. I like that name coming back. In the road test segment, I will be road testing the all-new 2023 Kia Niro EV. I just had a chance to drive it here in Southern California, and I drove it along with some of the top Kia product planners. I put them in the passenger seat. I made one of them kind of sick to his stomach. I think it was my driving rather than my talking, but I'm not sure which. But I'll have their insight into cars, too. We have a great interview for you, too. Tavon Brooks is our special guest. He's Vice President of Product Management at Jeep. And we'll be talking about the all-new long-wheelbase Wagoneer L. I drove that up in Montana not long ago. But before we do anything else, we'll be bringing you some of the most important auto information from around the world. So stay with us. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad, and stick around for more on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad back with you. We're glad Chris is back with us after Matt DiLorenzo subbed for him last week. And great to see him. Great to talk to him about what's going on in the car industry. This is a news segment. One of the big pieces of news this week is Hyundai's announcement that it's going to be spending $12.6 billion. That's a lot of change. That's a lot of money to create software-defined vehicles. And I think you and I both have the same understanding of what that is, Chris. But what's your take on this whole effort, software-defined vehicles?
Well, it's an effort to turn your car more into an ecosystem, a technological ecosystem like your phone with apps and services. And I would assume there's some subscription services that are going to come along with that. But essentially, it puts the car in a modular technological state so you can kind of pick and choose what you want to use, I'm guessing. At least that's the case with some of the concepts I've seen, Jack.
I think they'd love to have subscriptions. Subscriptions are great, for the business. I don't know if they're great for people, but subscriptions where people are paying monthly, maybe for services they never use. And in the car situation, you might be paying for navigation on a monthly basis with a subscription. You might be paying for your heated and ventilated seats. There's just so many things that they can charge you for if you let them. I think most of us like to buy a car and have it be something finite, right? We've got it, it's a product, and nothing has to be added, and hopefully nothing will be subtracted from it. But in this way, we buy the car at substantial cost, and then there's a bunch of things that we have to pay monthly. I'm not really that comfortable with this idea.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm leasing a Volkswagen right now, and I know that the statements that come every month are enough of a problem, not a problem, but they don't make me happy to see the statements in the mail. I can only imagine seeing another bill for Apple CarPlay, heated seats, navigation, and everything else on top of that.
Yeah, I guess the upside is maybe you can cancel some of this stuff if you never use it. Like if you never use your ventilated seats, you go, oh, well, I don't need that. You can turn that off. Feel free to do that. I think all of us have, I certainly do, have apps and subscriptions that I'm paying for that I don't use at all. And this goes back to the whole workout gym kind of thing, where the best customer for a gym is the customer who has a subscription and never shows up, right? Nothing can go wrong. It takes nothing. And in this instance, you can have all these things in your car where you never use, but you're paying for them on a monthly basis. It's big time cash flow for the car companies.
Yeah, I just did the exercise a couple of weeks ago. I cleared out, I think, almost $100 a month in just junk that I was paying for that I don't use. So that would definitely be me paying for the heated steering wheel or whatever that I never use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering what the upside is for the consumer. I guess you can add stuff that you haven't gotten when you purchased the car. That could be positive. Certainly over-the-air updates are good, but I think most companies are doing over-the-air updates now for free. So to suddenly have to pay for over-the-air updates for, say, maps or something like that, again, it's a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, I guess you can understand it if the price of the vehicle up front was substantially lower, but as we've seen many times recently, that's not the case. So,
yeah. Well, we'll see how that goes. They're going to spend $12 billion to figure it out. So we'll see. Here is a bit of good news, leavened with some not so good news. And that is new car prices are starting to come down. There's more supply. That all is good. This is from J.D. Power. They predicted lower list prices could come going forward, and we're starting to see that. The bad news is interest rates are up. And they're up pretty substantially, and they're likely to go up even higher as the Fed tries to end inflation, or put at least a somewhat of a pause or stop to inflation that's running rampant and making all of us poorer by the day. Average transaction price is right around $45,000 for the average new car. That's kind of crazy. And then you're looking at big increases in interest. This is a tough time to buy a car, isn't it?
Tough time to buy a car. People are edging up into mortgage territory for car payments now. I've seen several instances of people reporting, averages for some brands and some groups of people above $1,000. So it seems a very precarious situation to be in as a group of consumers.
Yeah. And, the push to electric cars is pushing this as well, because, of course, their transaction prices are much higher. I think the average transaction price for electric cars is something like $66,000, $67,000. So as we move in that direction, but without any ability to lower those prices, because it's hard to find any kind of electric that you'd want for under $40,000, I just don't know where this is going to go. It's a tough time.
Yeah, and we're more than a year away from the affordable EVs from General Motors and others that have promised these models to come out. So there's some distance between us and affordable vehicles.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are just being eliminated from the market. They can't buy a new car at all. They just don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the credit rating, and they can't qualify for loans at this kind of interest rate. At the same time, used car prices are going down. That's a double-edged sword for those of us who are trading in, of course, a used car on a new car, if we're going to do that. If you're buying a used car, I guess that's good news, unless you're trading in another used car on that used car. But at least that index is a little bit down after this incredible trajectory where sometimes used vehicles were more expensive on the face of them than the equivalent new vehicle.
Yeah, I think the big downside there will be, if you buy from a dealership, a lot of times the used cars, they have higher interest rates than new cars. So we may see that be even more of a damping force on that side of the market too. It'll be really interesting to see where things go the end of next year, heck, even into this year, as quickly as things are moving, that we could look at this completely differently in a couple of months.
Right. I mean, we have always said that used vehicles in general, cars are depreciating assets, not necessarily what you want to buy, but that's what they have been. And we saw some appreciation in used car values over the course of the last year, spurred by the lack of supply of new cars, among other things, lack of used car supply too. But now they're reverting to the way things used to be. And my prediction is we're going to see probably some vehicle incentives. We're going to see oversupply again in the market, especially because we're on the verge of recession, right? I mean, that's a tough time. And we'll just have to see what happens there. It's kind of frightening times in a lot of ways. Interest rates going up, wages not keeping pace with interest rates, vehicle prices still escalating, except on the used car side. And maybe a recession that'll throw a lot of people out of work. I mean, it could be a really bad deal going forward. I hope it's not, but it could be.
You just brought the rain cloud. We better come up with some good news to back that up with.
Yeah. Well, here's a little bit of good news anyway, and it is Toyota has restarted the BZ4X production. They had a safety recall. Go figure, an electric car with a safety recall. This was interesting too. The reason for the recall is the wheels would fall off. That seems kind of like job one. Keep the wheels on the car. But, that's what they ran into. Some of the cars' wheels would come loose. So they recalled not a ton of vehicles. Of course, there weren't a ton of vehicles out there in the wild, about 2,700 vehicles this past June. And I think they've sorted that out. The Subaru Solterra model was also affected by this. And if you were one of the very few, I mean, that vehicle was even in much lower supply than the BZ4X. That's something to be concerned about too. Wheels falling off.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about the Lexus RZ, which is also shared much with those two vehicles, but it also hasn't released yet. So maybe they fixed it before it left.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope they're keeping the wheels on that one, and that's a good one. Well, when we come back, we will be doing our road tests, and pretty cool road tests, I think, this time around. I mean, you had a very nifty car. Remind me what it is.
The Acura Integra?
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to say about that. I have not driven it, so I'm looking forward to that. And I was driving the Kia Niro EV. I drove all the new Kia Niros, and EV is probably the one to talk about on this show, so we will. And so when we come back, we'll have both of those road tests. And so stay with us. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad. Thanks so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad with you. And it is road test time. And we have cool vehicles to road test. And I guess one of them is kind of a crossover SUV. I was going to say this is a non-SUV segment, but I guess you could describe the Niro as a crossover SUV in the broadest sense. You have the revival of a very vaunted name from Acura. I think they're excited about it. I'm excited to hear about it. Tell us about the Acura Integra.
Yeah, I spent the week driving the Acura Integra. Acura released two main sort of versions of this car. So you can buy one with a continuously variable transmission. I haven't driven one. I'm not going to talk so badly about it, but I think the manual transmission is the way to go with this car. I drove the A-Spec vehicle with technology package. It had about a $37,000 starting price. This vehicle, it's got a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It makes 200 horsepower. It's 1.5 liters, sorry, not 1.6. Through a 5-speed manual transmission to the front wheels. It's not the quickest car around. It does 0 to 60 in around 7 seconds, but I think that's not ever been the point of the Integra. It's always been more about balance, handling, and sort of a lively attitude, which this car has in spades. So it shares a lot with the Honda Civic, Jack. And I'm going to ask you in a second if you've driven the Integra as compared to the Civic. But sitting inside and the driving sensation is a lot like a Civic Si, but it's a little bit more upscale. Jack, have you driven both? And what do you think?
I have not driven the new Acura Integra. I just haven't been behind the wheel of that yet. So I'd love to do that. I've been talking with the Honda Acura people about getting behind the wheel of that, actually. It is nominated for, it's one of the semifinalists in the North American Car of the Year, so I will be testing it probably in a week or so when I'm in, I guess next week when I'm in Michigan. I'll have a chance to get behind the wheel, I hope. But I hope to have a longer stint in it, too. I mean, it has always been kind of the zooty Civic Si, right? I mean, the polished up and cool Acura version.
And that's still the case here. There's a lot of Civic that comes through in the driving experience and the sound and the feel, but it's got an Alcantara and leather interior in bright red, I might add. So very flashy inside, very comfortable. But back to the driving, I'll just say the 6-speed manual here, Honda and Acura, they do such a good job making the feel of the manual transmission. It's perfectly notchy. There's not too much resistance. It's very easy to find your gear. The clutch is very, very intuitive. You kind of jump in and you automatically know how things are supposed to feel, and that's how it goes from there on out. There is rev matching on the downshift here, so you can kind of takes the brain out of it. I think I said is how I described it with the Civic a while back. Makes downshifts a lot easier. And just the tactile experience of this car, it makes the right noises. It has the right amount of sensation in the steering wheel. There's good feedback. Just like a Civic, it feels lively and ready to go. And that's kind of the attitude that I look for in this car, and it's one that I'm glad that I found.
Yeah, no, that is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the inside, you get all the same things that make the Civic very useful, except for here, you've got a big hatchback too. There's 37.4, I had to look at my notes, 37.4 inches of legroom in the back seat, Jack. So me at 6 feet tall, I've got 2 kids in the booster seats now in the back seat. We threw my dog back in the back seat. Everybody had plenty of room. The headroom is a little lacking in the back. It's 36.4 inches. The roof slopes. Looks great outside, but it does take some of the practicality away inside. There is a 9-inch touchscreen display. The 7 inches standard. Mine had the 9-inch. The vehicle had a 5.3-inch available touch head-up display, if I can get through this without tongue-tying myself. A 10.2-inch digital gauge display. This is configurable, but not to the degree that like a Volvo or a BMW is, where you can move maps and things around in there. But plenty of information. It's very easily visible. Honda did a really good Acura did a really good job with that. But as a practical car, Jack, I'll just wrap up by saying I think, people talk about the similarities between this and the SI and being disappointed that it is sort of a zooted up SI. But as you said, I think this is the attitude that it's always had, and they nailed it right on the head with this car. Practicality, the trunk is really big in the hatchback. You got plenty of back seat space, a lot of great small item storage. So from a usability standpoint, I could get away with this with a family of 3 or 4 people. So you get your performance and you can carry people too. So I don't think there's much to complain about in that regard.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that they haven't had this all along, right? I mean, the Integra was such a mainstay for them, really was one of the cars, along with the Acura Legend, of course, that put Acura on the map. And then they kind of walked away from that nameplate and they went to different kind of naming culture and all that kind of stuff, different structure there. And it just didn't seem to play. So I'm glad to see them, coming back to this, and hopefully it'll do some good for them.
I agree.
Well, I was driving a vehicle. It is really an interesting experiment, I think, from Kia. Kia, of course, wants to be a leader in electric vehicles globally. That's their stated goal out there. And the 2023 Kia Niro EV is the value-priced portion of its 1-2 punch into that market in the American market. Of course, they have the EV6, which is kind of the up-level thing in that market. Nice little, kind of a crossover SUV. I mean, it's hard to describe what the EV6 is. It kind of looks like a sedan from one angle, and maybe you could say it's a crossover from another. The Niro EV is more definitely crossover, I guess, but it's small. It's a very small crossover. It is their value-priced battery electric offering, if you call something 40,000 plus value-priced. It can be well more than that. But there are also the hybrid and plug-in hybrid versions of the Niro. I got to drive both of those as well. And the hybrid will actually be the one that's the big volume seller. It's much, much less expensive, has virtually all the attributes of the EV. Of course, it's not zero emission, and all that, but it is cool. So let's talk about the EV. Certainly, this is the second generation of the Niro EV. They had one before. This kind of continues in that tradition. You know, the EV6 is based on a global battery electric platform. This is based in a platform that can also be obviously conventionally powered and you know, use hybrid power as well. It's not offered in the same trims. The EV is not offered in the same trims as the HEV and the PHEV. They have conventional name trims, LX, EX, and SX. The EV has the wind and the wave trims. Isn't that just green of them? I thought so.
Yeah, it's fine. You know, it's funny. It doesn't. They did it with the EV6 too. Those are just so, and Ford's now doing it with the Bronco and the Mustang Mach-E. These trims that aren't necessarily tied to like a sporty feeling with the car. I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and the ethos. I get that. I mean, the federal government and the Congress, I guess the president as well, threw them a big curveball, giant curveball. I mean, it broke from here to there. This was a massive curveball with the Inflation Act, which eliminated what they thought would be a $7,500 tax credit that would go to each of their buyers. And now those buyers will not receive that. So as of now, as of us talking to one another right now, they haven't priced this vehicle because they don't know what to do about that. Suddenly they're liable to be very non-competitive. My guess it will be somewhere around $41,000, $42,000. You know, certainly not cheap. It does have nice stuff in the heavily equipped wave trim. It has a power-operated sunroof, heated and ventilated, perforated vegan leather front seats. Don't you love that term? Vegan leather. I'm not sure what that means, but it's not leather. It's not from a cow. 6-speaker Harman Kardon premium sound. So they kind of zooted up a little bit. This would probably be priced around $45,000, $50,000. It has to be less than the EV6, which also is not getting the tax credit. So maybe its price will go up. I mean, we've seen the price of, say, the Ford Lightning just rocket up. So that might happen too. This is a hatchback vehicle, 5-passenger. I think a good-looking vehicle. It's a little longer than the previous Niro. Overall length is up by 2.5 inches. It has, I think, better packaging these days. It has thinner front seats. They use high-strength steel to make the seats, so it adds a significant amount of rear legroom, which is great. More cargo area. They have increased the cargo area in the EV from 18.5 cubic feet to 22.8 cubic feet, almost on par with the HEV, so that is good. And with the seats folded, 63.7 cubic feet. So this is a vehicle that's not very long that has just an enormous amount of cargo space. And pretty fun to drive, I think. You know, this has more horsepower than most of the vehicles in the Niro lineup. It is the most powerful of the vehicles in the Niro lineup. Right around 200 horsepower. The HEV only has 139 horsepower, so you can see there's liable to be a pretty significant difference. The fly in the oatmeal there is it weighs a heck of a lot more. It weighs 700 pounds more. So you're carrying two really heavy people, you know, around with you when you're driving with it empty. But it handles pretty good. These are all front drive vehicles. From what I've told you and what you know about this, what's your take on what Kia has done here, Chris?
I think they've done about as well as they could given the platform that the vehicle rides on. You know, there are a lot of compromises that sometimes come up when you jam a battery into what used to be a gas vehicle platform. Volvo found that out with the XC40 Recharge. So I think they've done a really good job with the space that they have. They've also done a good job sort of drawing some of the upscaleness from some versions of the EV6. Some of the interior photos I've seen look very nice, very upscale for what would have been a very reasonable price had there been a tax credit. But
yeah, I think they had to chart it up a little bit because they knew it was going to be much more expensive and thus appealing to a different buyer than was going to buy that $27,000 hybrid, which I think is one heck of a value, by the way. We should talk about range because we're talking about EVs, of course. And Kia claims 250 miles of range on a charge for this thing. It will charge on fast charger to 80% charge, which is kind of standard fast charging kind of max these days, so you don't set fire to things, in about 45 minutes. So it charges pretty rapidly compared to some other in the segment. They've done a good job, I think, overall with the powertrain here. I don't know how many they're going to sell. They're going to sell more of these than they're going to sell plug-in hybrids. I know that. And what's your take on that? In some ways, I think the plug-in hybrid might be the most practical of all. You get that potential 33 miles of EV range and then that gasoline engine when you need it. Tell me about your thoughts.
I think it's just lack of knowledge, Jack. We had hybrids for so long, and plug-in hybrids kind of came along after the fact, and then EVs have been overlapped with the development of that, and they've gotten all the press. So people are not as aware of plug-in hybrids or what they do, or what they're capable of. A lot of people don't know that they get all electric range out of it and that they can still drive when that is exhausted. So,
yeah. And, plugging that in, it charges much quicker, of course. I mean, if you're charging this thing at home, you're going to spend a lot of time charging and probably not get a full charge in it. And maybe that's just okay. If you don't have a full charge in your watch, it's still going to tell you the time, right? So all that's good. And, I like the vehicle. It's hard to rate it given the fact we don't have the price, but I think we have a good estimation of the price. And it's going to be much more expensive than the hybrid version, but I think still a good value as an EV.
I agree.
And when we come back, we will have a great interview. Tavon Brooks is our guest. He's the Vice President of Product Management at Jeep, and he has a lot to say about the Wagoneer L. So stay with us for that. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you, and thanks so much for being with us. Join us again right after the break. Everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad with you. We're in Montana with a terrific guest, talking about a terrific vehicle, the all-new Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. Kind of from Jeep, right?
Well, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Tavon Brooks is our guest here, and or I guess I'm your guest in some ways, but thanks so much for being on the program.
No, thanks for having us.
Tavon is Vice President of Jeep Product Marketing here in North America. Big job, fun job, and you get to be in places like this.
Yeah.
Marketing a great vehicle like this. What excites you about Wagoneer and Wagoneer L in particular, the long wheelbase version?
Yeah, well, we launched Wagoneer a year ago, and for us it's a premium extension of the brand, and I'm so thrilled that we've had success so far with the model. I mean, we're number 2 in terms of share amongst all the short wheelbase vehicles, and so I'm excited what we've done so far with the vehicle. Now we've stretched it. And a lot of people ask me, well, why did you take already a big vehicle and stretch it even more to make it longer and bigger? And it's quite simple. Like 30% of the segment actually shops for more cargo space in the 40 cubic foot range, and they do not shop in the lower. And
you couldn't even reach these people if you didn't make the vehicle bigger, right? I mean, that 30% would be lost to you if you didn't do that.
Right, and for sure, because when you look at how they use the vehicle, so they use all the seats, and they take road trips, and so they need the space to put all the stuff. And so the cubic feet that we have in the standard wheelbase is quite frankly not enough. They need more. So that's why we did the long wheelbase.
Yeah, well, and you have real world experience with this, right? You've got a big family. I've got a big family. I got a 5-person family, all girls. I think you've got a 6-person family, all girls. Tell us about traveling with women, right?
I do. I mean, well, it's with women, it's anybody in general. Like, you want to bring all the stuff you think you need, and so like I feel like
and a little more,
and I feel like with my kids, I'm looking at them and I'm saying, well, it's just a weekend trip, and we have all this stuff. And for me as the dad, I feel like I'm the one that has to pack the vehicle and so get all the stuff ready. And just in my past, when we went to travel, like we always ran out of space. And so, but with the L, I'm telling you, like with that amount of cargo space, like you'll find yourself putting in more stuff just to make this, the open space you have just to fill the cargo area.
Yeah.
So,
Let's backtrack a little on Wagoneer, because this is a segment you haven't been in maybe forever, but certainly in this kind of space, right? This size of vehicle, three-row vehicle, it's always kind of, Jeep's done it a couple of times, not particularly successfully. This time around, absolutely successfully. What's the rationale to go big like this in that?
Well, I mean, to be quite honest, we started this back in the 60s when we launched the Wagoneer at the time. Like, we started what it meant to be a large premium SUV, and we exited the market 30 years ago, and now we're back. So, but we see a lot of, at least in the data that I look at, a lot of our customers who are in Grand Cherokees at some point have growing families. They're getting bigger. They want more space. We did the L, which is great. But then as your kids get bigger and bigger, you start to have more and more things. You need a larger vehicle. And so we thought, what a great point in time to come back into the marketplace with something that we started with the Wagoneer, Grand Wagoneer.
Well, and the three-row is the key to this. And the three-row that really is accepting of full-size adults. I mean, we see a lot of third rows. I call myself Mr. Three-Row sometimes because I'm testing so many SUVs with third rows. Many of them are not particularly accommodating.
Yeah.
But in the Wagoneer, it definitely is accommodating for adults, right?
For sure. Like, I was joking earlier today with you guys. I literally take meetings in the third row. Because it's actually quite comfortable. Not just the fact that we have almost a class-leading legroom back there, 36 inches. But I feel like I can sit back there, recline the seat, put my laptop on the center console in the second row, and have a meeting like I'm sitting in my office at home, And so, like, I'm really proud of the third row package. And in fact, as a selling point of the vehicle, we have a lot of customers that come in from other models, and we tell them first thing, get in the third row, because they know, like, once they get back there and they see how better our package is, they understand why we did what we did, and why we're selling. How we're selling today.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the longer wheelbase version, access is even better, right? You have a longer rear door, which helps you.
We do, yeah.
It's the vehicle's 12 inches longer, I think, than the...
Yes, it's 12 inches longer. The wheelbase is 7 inches, and then 5 inches to the cargo. So that allowed us a little bit more space to allow easy access in and out of the third row.
Yeah. But the real key is the added cargo space, right? I mean, that's something you had to have. Is it for... commercial use too? I mean, we see a lot of these vehicles, or vehicles of this size, used to take people to the airport, or valet use. Is that one of the?
That is one of the use cases for sure, and we're dabbling in that ourselves. But yeah, the longer wheelbase is more, could be used for, we saying black transport, executive transport type of thing. Yeah, I can see a good use case for that.
Yeah. But also, you have. There are really two vehicles here to talk about, right? I mean, there's the Wagoneer L, and then there's the Grand Wagoneer L. Describe for our listeners the differences.
Between the two? Yeah, and there's stock differences. So the Wagoneer is more, what we call more mainstream large. So it's more for your family's 8-passenger seating. It's more focused on safety with all the suite of safety features that we have. The Grand Wagoneer is, in fact, what it's called. It's the Grand. It's the more premium model. It has the more upgraded engine. Even to the small little details of how the exterior design is done with the, I think they showed you today with the grille surrounds and the lighting and stuff like that. It's meant to give more premium. They showed us
their etchings, right?
Yeah, the etchings. Yeah, you can see American written in the grille. But just how the attention of detail that is paid attention to when we did the Grand shows you that that's who we're going up against. We're going up against the premium part of the segment.
Right.
And so that's what it's meant to do.
Yeah, so in some areas, I guess with the Wagoneer, you're probably looking at the Chevy Tahoe as a logical competitor. Ford Expedition is another logical competitor. And then you're looking at Cadillac Escalade and those.
For the Grand side.
For the Grand side.
Yes, pretty much.
As logical competitors. Certainly infotainment is important. And, Jeep, Wagoneer has done a great job with that. Tell us a bit about your take on infotainment and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, well, in the Grand Wagoneer, we have 75 inches of screen. So that tells you how important we think it is to have a nice infotainment package. But no, it's for us, we put in the same radio, the upgraded R1 radio that's in the Grand Cherokee. And so we find that our customers love it. It's very, very easy to use, very intuitive. And even with the passenger screen. So we have on the passenger side a screen that the passenger can watch Netflix from or mirror their phone. I've even admittedly mirrored my computer screen. I can plug my laptop to it, and it mirrors the screen as a second monitor. So we take that very seriously, giving customers something they can use, and that's really neat for them. So
Yeah, yeah. And basically have all the comforts of home, if not more so, or the entertainment from home, with Fire TV, streaming services, multiple streams in the same vehicle, so you don't have arguments about what to watch.
Right.
All of those things are really good features.
It is. And I'm even thinking about, like, anecdotally for me, I have a Grand Wagoneer myself, and I've noticed, like, an eerie silence, like when the kids are in the car. It's a phenomenon so cool to watch. Like, they all get in, they all put on their headphones. I got one daughter on this screen, the other daughter's on that screen, my wife is on the passenger screen, and I can just focus on driving, just get to where I go. And no one's arguing about anything, so it's a great package that we have.
Yeah. And new powertrain, really interesting powertrains for this vehicle. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So we have two new engines. The Hurricane and Hurricane 510. The Hurricane is for the Wagoneer. It's 420 horsepower, 2 miles per gallon improvement over the V8 that it replaces in Series 2 and Series 3 Wagoneer. And then on the Grand Wagoneer side, we have the Hurricane 510, which is the 510 is a nod to its horsepower. It has 510 horsepower, and that also has 2 mile per gallon improvement combined on the fuel efficiency. So
yeah, great stuff.
So good advancements there in terms of powertrain.
What most excites you about this vehicle overall? It's got to be something that can kind of, wow, we really did something great here.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a product perspective, the engineers and the industrial team knocked that out of the park. I mean, the car has all the best in class claims you want in the segment from an infotainment perspective, top notch, and from a technology perspective, it has everything you could want in a large EV today. What excites me the most about it all is that, like I said, we exited the market 30 years ago. We're now back, and it's so interesting to see. Like, Grand Cherokee has a very loyal base. 7 million people have bought Grand Cherokees, and it'll be so fun to watch how we grow this customer base, right?
Yeah.
We
because now they have someplace to graduate to,
right? Right. Into from Grand Cherokee into Wagoneer, Grand Wagoneer, but even pulling from outside of Jeep, we're going to attract new customers that would have never considered us before because we didn't have a vehicle that size to go after. So I think, watching the 7 million from Grand Cherokee, it'll be interesting to see 10 years later how big the Wagoneer customer base grows to.
Right.
I
think towing is important to this customer. Tell me about the considerations for towing.
Yeah, we have best in class towing, 10,000 pounds, and we maintain that with the engines. So Wagoneer still has that claim. Yeah, a good chunk of the consumer base in the large, they tow. They tow their boat, they tow their UTVs, and et cetera, et cetera. So all of our Wagoneer, Grand Wagoneers are standard with a tow package. And then you can get a heavy duty tow package that adds a little bit more into that. But it's very important to that customer base. Yeah.
I drove up here, and we're in a ranch outside Bozeman in Montana. Just gorgeous up here. Perfect day too. Thanks for the perfect day. But I was in a Wagoneer, and it struck me, wow, this is an incredible value here. Because I'm getting a lot of what I get in Grand Wagoneer. It's pitched as being mass market, but it's mass market at a particular level, right? So tell us about that thinking.
Yeah. I mean, Jeep, and especially Grand Cherokee, plays the same way, where it's not really considered for most consumers to be mainstream. It's a little bit above, more into the premium space. And so the same thing with Wagoneer is even how we've contented the vehicle, it's not contented the same as a base, let's say Chevy, etc.
Yeah.
Like, it has a little bit more.
It's not a Tahoe LS.
So Right. So it has a little bit more content, and so it can command that premium of what Jeep does, in the full size with Grand Cherokee. Yeah.
What can the consumer look forward to? I know you can't tell about future product, but certainly we hear a lot about electrification, hybridization. You have some, I guess the most popular, best-selling plug-in hybrid, is a Jeep. Can we look to something like that going forward?
Yeah. So we actually announced a few weeks ago that by 2025, all of the segments that we play in will have an electrified variant, including the large. So by 2025, we'll have a large SUV electrified variant that customers can choose to purchase.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What else should our consumer listeners and viewers know about Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer?
Well, I mean, in Jeep in general, our future is bright. To your point about electrification, we are full steam ahead. For us, it's not just about compliance. It's about how do we sell capability, how do we sell the value to the customer, and what they can get out of the electrified powertrain. So that's really, what we have 4 BEV models that's going to come by 2025. So
Battery electric
vehicles, right, by 2025. So the future's bright with Jeep.
Perfect. Well, Tavon Brooks, thanks so much for talking with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks for talking to our listeners. And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you. It is listener question time. We love taking your listener questions. Please send them to editor@drivingtoday.com, editor@drivingtoday.com, where we will look to answer them on an upcoming show. And here's the question. It is from Becky. She's in Bend, Oregon. Very simple question from Becky. She's a woman of few words, apparently. She says, what is your favorite minivan?
And I do love a good minivan.
Becky,
my favorite is going to be 2 of these, and I'm kind of I'm torn between these 2, the Kia Carnival and the Toyota Sienna. I think the Kia Carnival has great styling. It's a really nice interior and great tech. The Toyota has a hybrid powertrain, all-wheel drive, and a nice interior as well. So I think it really depends on if you need all-wheel drive and want a hybrid, you can just go for the Toyota. But my favorite is between those 2, the Carnival or the Sienna.
You stole my 2, Chris, and we have not collaborated on this before we answer this question, but those are the exact 2 that I was going to identify. The Nerad family spent a week in Texas in September, right around Labor Day, and the vehicle choice there was the Sienna minivan, and I just fell in love with that thing. It was so good all around. We drove all over the place. We drove from Fort Worth down to Austin and back. We were at a lake house around Dallas for a while. We did a lot of driving with, 5 of us, 3 women and their luggage. Or I guess 4 women, 3 daughters and my wife and their luggage, which was a ton of luggage, and we got it all in there somehow. So it was just superior. And the Kia Carnival, beautifully finished, almost like a limousine inside, depending on how you get it fixed up or what trim level you get. So those are really superior, which is interesting that we don't mention a couple of the go-tos, which are the Honda Odyssey and, the Chrysler Pacifica.
There's nothing wrong with those either. I just think that that Kia and Toyota did such a great job with the latest redesigns. It's hard to ignore those 2.
Yeah, they're just terrific minivans. And, I can't say enough about the Sienna, and I haven't spent as much time in the Carnival, but the Sienna was perfect, I'll tell you, for that family of 5 with all their stuff. Just awesome. Well, I think that's our show for this week. And Chris, I'm so glad to see you. So glad to have you back on the show. Thanks so much.
Thanks for letting me come back. And I will say, everybody, if you like what you heard, please check into the sportsmapradio.com website. There you can find our show on the Saturday morning schedule. You can also find our podcast on all the major platforms and a radio formatted version of the show.
Yeah. We're on YouTube these days, too, and that's kind of fun. And that's good. We want to thank the SportsMap Radio Network stations for carrying our show. And most of all, we want to thank you all for listening to America on the Road. We appreciate it. And we hope you join us again next week for another edition of America on the Road. You believe it? I think we're maybe done.
Oh. Jeff Young's sending me work to do. Stop it, Jeff.
He sends me work to do too. I guess
he told me, is he a police officer?
Not that I'm aware of.
He said he was going to police training the other day, and he was going to be late.
That's I think he might be a reserve officer or something like that.
Oh.
I don't think he, that's my sense of what's going on with that. As opposed to something else.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to send you and Charlie an email with some thoughts about other things. The good news about the radio station we just got on.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah.
Hopefully we can leverage that.
Yeah, that would be good. I'm going to stop recording.